I'm Ritwij, and today we are examining the state of India-United States relations, a partnership that in just past few months has produced a bilateral critical minerals framework, a new Quad-level minerals pact, India's commitment to purchase 500 billion worth of American goods over the next 5 years, and a landmark interim trade agreement. So where does this partnership actually stand, and what do these developments mean for both countries? To help us answer those questions, I'm joined by a guest with an exceptional vantage point on this relationship. Raymond Vickery Jr. is a senior associate at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, where he holds the chair on India and emerging Asia economics. During the Clinton administration, he served as the US Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Trade Development, where he was directly responsible for India under the Department of Commerce's Big Emerging Markets Initiative. Thank you so much, sir, for your time and a very warm welcome to the show.
Well, thanks very much for having me. I look forward to our interaction.
Sir, I would like to begin the conversation by asking that the US Secretary of State's 4-day visit delivered a bilateral critical minerals framework, a quad level ministerial pact. So, how can India and the US now institutionalize these commitments beyond the current administration, ensuring that the strategic partnership remains resilient despite the change in governments on both the sides?
Well, that's the fundamental question as to how you can institutionalize it, making it go forward. There's no question that the U.S. and India, as the two largest democracies in the world, and I would argue two greatest democracies in the world, have so much in common strategically, economically, person to person, across the board that if there is not cooperation and a solidification of the relationship, the world and both countries will be very much worse off. As you know, going back in history, the Indian democracy and the US democracy were estranged, really, that came about because of the really top-down economics situation in India, and also the Cold War, in which India tried to make its own way and have an approach which was not really compatible with, at that time, the United States trying to fight a Cold War against the spread of the communism from the USSR. That changed early in the 1990s, as you know, largely because of economic factors and the demise of the Soviet Union. And we've been on an upward path since then. There have been some difficulties when India tested nuclear weapons. But in the United States, there's been a very strong view, and in India, that these two largest democracies have to work together on this. That having been said, this upward path really has been very much affected by the erratic nature of the Trump administration. And your in question implies that we are in a somewhat normal situation in which ministers of external affairs, secretaries of state, could get together with others and reach agreements which would then be enforced by the bureaucracies and the institutions in both countries. Unfortunately, that is not the situation at this point. We have a president that takes a transactional view rather than an institutional view, that who looks for the best possible face to put on the events to show that he is winning in the transactions, and that it makes for good television. After all, for 14 years, He was a television reality TV star, and that's the orientation. So to think of this in normal terms and to try to analyze it in the way in which logic and institutionalization would indicate is fruitless, because that is not the situation we are in. In the United States, it has been shown in foreign policy that even the most sacred of obligations, namely international obligations, namely treaty obligations, have been somewhat changed, if not ignored. And I'm referring to the NATO treaty, which is as strong a relationship as you possibly could have in terms of U.S. law, institutionalization, and a history. And you're very well aware of what President Trump and his administration have done to throw cold water on the usefulness of that and making various threats. So you have to look at the U.S.-India relationship in a realistic way in that context. Now, it's very good that Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, had a 4-day trip to India in which he got to see firsthand the vibrancy and the importance of the Indian nation, the Indian peoples. And it's good that he didn't stay just in Delhi for meetings, but got out. Nevertheless, that having been said, Marco Rubio, this is his first trip to India. He really doesn't understand anything about India. And he is an opportunist who answers strictly to his boss, the President of the United States. And as we very well know, there is an erratic quality to President Trump's approach to transactions and to making good television. So that having been said, you have to take the kinds of commitments, so-called, which were made both bilaterally and in terms of the Quad with a grain of salt, because it is perfectly obvious that Marco Rubio, even though he has a dual obligation in regard to being Secretary of State as well as head of the being the national security advisor to the president, he is not his own man. And he will turn on a dime on any of these so-called commitments, as will his president. So that having been said, you need to look at these outcomes of the trip in a realistic fashion. The first dose of realism you might get is in regard to this so-called commitment to buy the $500 billion worth of U.S. goods. That's not really a commitment. That's an aspirational statement which comes from earlier visits of Prime Minister to the White House. It's supposedly over a period of time, which makes it, yes, somewhat ambitious in terms of the level of trade and the level of imports to India, but is by no means some sort of real commitment to that trade. So what has to happen, in my view, for those of us who believe in the relationship and want to see it on an upward path, is that there have to be found additional ways to try to cement the relationship rather than depending upon strictly the bilateral transactional approach, which was on display during the Marco Rubio visit to India.
Yeah. So you mentioned that, the Trump administration take a very transactional view and not a very institutional view for the situation. What exactly do you mean by transactional views, and how this view could be challenged in order to make sure that relationships keep thriving?
Well, the transactional view means that each interaction and each issue is handled in a very limited fashion. And that means what is the outcome on that particular issue with that immediate time frame. Transactional is opposed to relationship, a relational kind of situation in which you're looking not just at the immediate issue at hand and not just within the immediate time frame, but what is the impact on the long-term relationship? So that's a very different approach for the United States. The United States under President Biden, really on both sides, whether it be George W. Bush, Obama, Biden, have looked at this as a relationship which is going forward. And so you don't just say, will the United States come out on top in regard to negotiations on this particular issue? Let's take a visa issue, if you will, or even come out on top in terms of a terrorism approach. What you do is you look at it as to what is the impact on the overall relationship? What is the impact on the building of trust? Without trust going forward, there is no ability to have the relationship sustained on an upward passage. So that's the that's the difference. Some people say, well, everybody's in it for a transaction, and so it's not different. But it is because it has to do with the breadth of the consideration and the time frame in which it has been considered, rather than just what's going to look good for me today and what's going to please my base, my political base, whether it be in India or the US. And it's a very different approach. And what unfortunately many academicians and people of goodwill on both sides are trying to shoehorn the present situation into the logic which we have followed for the past 30 years or so. And that logic is out the window at this time in regard to the Trump administration. That doesn't mean there isn't a way forward, and I'm sure that's what you want to discuss.
Yeah. So what exactly is the way forward, and how can this relationship come on track?
Well, first of all, you have to realize there is no silver bullet here. There's no one thing that is going to be done which is going to correct the transactional reality TV approach to the US India relationship. So, that having been realized, what has to happen is you have to look for other points of political leverage that can be employed to try to ameliorate, not solve, but ameliorate the very difficult stage we're in right now. And the way in which that is done is look for other areas, particularly in the United States, for leverage. One of them, of course, is the Indian American community and its interest in the U.S. relationship. Another is the business community, cementing the business relationships. It has been shown that President Trump responds. He's a business person and he responds to business people. The latest example of that of course, is the backing off in terms of green card uh, applications having to take place outside the United States and backing off to some degree on the H-1B visa situation. So that's important. It is very important to understand and to work with the nascent centers of power, which are in our Constitution. And that means the checks and balances from the judiciary system and from the legislative branch. On the judicial side, you need to try to move toward not just executive agreements, but actual treaty obligations, which then the courts can be involved because the courts can enforce treaties, whereas executive agreements are really only the whim of the executive, which has to be in power. On the legislative side, it is important that even though the Republican control majority has been unwilling at this point to stand up against President Trump, there are pockets of people who, Republican and Democratic, in the Congress of the United States, who want to see this relationship flourish. And so it becomes very important to try to encourage those people to be able to work with the business community and the academic community to be able to put into place the levers which will keep the relationship going. So I think that rather than trying to simply react to the latest statement on social media that was posted by the president, it is to try to find those other ways in which you can go forward. And I believe that it can be very helpful in restoring some level of normality to the relationship. But make no mistake about it, this is not a normal situation. And we're not going through a normal time in the United States. We have the midterms coming up. We have No King's Days, which are turning out millions of people. You have the Supreme Court beginning to stand up on some things, and you have some stirrings within the Congress as well. So that's the reality of the situation, and I hope your viewers who are interested will take to heart and not simply accept at face value the kinds of pronouncements and statements which come out, even of a positive kind of interaction, such as the visit of the Secretary of State to India.
Yeah, coming to another critical angle, which is the China angle, and United States, especially Washington, has explicitly described in India as one of the most important strategic partners and a key counterweight to China, especially in the Indo-Pacific region. And we have also seen some developments on the Quad front after some silence. So, how do you see India's role in the Indo-Pacific, and how do you see the recent Quad summit which happened in New Delhi?
Well, I think the Quad Summit is helpful in terms of institutionalizing the relationship not only between the U.S. and India, but Japan and Australia, the great democracies interested in the Indo-Pacific. And it is true that the Quad relationship has progressed. As you will recall, it was just started out after the Boxing Day tsunami as sort of an emergency way for the navies to be able to cooperate on disaster relief. And it's progressed from there with a number of working groups all the way from space to trade, critical minerals, and so forth. But the reality is that India has been very wary of security implications of the Quad. And India needs to get over that. You can't expect that India is going to have partners that it can call on in terms of a real confrontation. For example, if China should resume its claim to Arunachal Pradesh, an entire Indian state, it's not compatible, it seems to me, with the present stage of development and independence of India to say that strategic autonomy is the end all for India's foreign policy. What does strategic autonomy mean? Strategic autonomy in the past has meant, well, we can deal with Russia as we please, regardless of what happens to the rest of the relationship. That is not a pole upon which to base a foreign policy. The real threat strategically to India is from China. And India needs to be able to have not only a strategy which confronts that threat, but partners that confront that threat and principles upon which its foreign policy is based. The difficulty on the U.S. side was on display in the G Trump summit, and that is that Trump really does not respect the role of India in terms of strategic balancing of China. He went into that with sort of a G2 approach, that the two great leaders could get together and they could make a deal and that he would come out on top. That is not the outcome of that summit. And it is absolutely essential that the Quad move from a consulting approach to a real strategic alliance, in my view. And that means interoperability in terms of military. It means closeness, which has been on track and has been sidetracked. But make no mistake about it, at this point, it's a very, very difficult situation because of the difficulty in relying on the United States as a partner strategically. So both sides need to re-examine what they're doing, and I think that will be in India's interest to to rethink its foreign policy and not just view it in the context of the Cold War and Nehru, but what its real strategic and economic interests are. And I would argue they lie with the United States, not with China, not with Russia. And sure, nobody is going to tell India what to do. That's sort of a smokescreen every time some Indian politician that doesn't want to see the U.S. relationship go forward. They say, well, the U.S. trying to dictate it. Nobody's going to dictate to India. India is too big, too important to be able to do that. And so that self-confidence needs to be reflected in the Indian foreign policy, in my view.
Yeah. So I would like to conclude the discussion by asking that if you have to share one message to New Delhi, especially to the policy circles, what exactly that message would be?
Well, I think that one message that I would try to get through to India, and particularly to the Ministry of External Affairs, is not to take the approach to the United States of what is it that you want from us? But to take the approach of one, how can we be helpful in furthering the principles which India and the United States are founded on? And that is respect for the individual, respect for the principles enshrined in the United Nations Charter, and that is non-aggression, the non-use, not the use of force. The India needs not to succumb to the transactional bilateral approach. It needs to look to its interest in a broader fashion, not just in borders with Pakistan, not just in borders with China, but what is India's role in the world as a great nation? And a great nation has interests which include its founding principles and values. And that, it seems to me, is the message which I would like for India to look at, because we need leadership in the democratic world. That leadership is not coming from the United States at this point, and India needs, in concert with other the great democracies of the world, whether they be in Japan, Australia, Western Europe, Canada, Brazil, to be able to fulfill that role. And I think that that's the way forward.
Thank you so much, sir, for your time, for your insights, and for sharing your wider view on India-United States relations. And appreciate
Well,
you here on the show.
well, thank you very much for the work you're doing and for having me.
Thank you so much, sir.